And I would say it's not just one group because it was a coalition. And I would say that the most successful, powerful effort that I've seen was the same-sex marriage initiative, the same-sex marriage lobby. And the reason that I say that is probably, well, definitely, not probably, 10 years ago, the issue was a back burner. Mainstream legislators weren't giving it serious consideration. Many legislators, even legislators that members of the LGBT community, were not supportive of it openly, and it wasn't taken very seriously. But the advocates got together, they built coalitions, they addressed leadership, they did everything right that they had to do. But even more importantly, when it came time for addressing the legislation, they stuck to this mission of we want same-sex marriage. We don't want any deviation from that goal. We don't want any compromise on that. We aren't going to move from that, and because of that strength, ultimately the same-sex marriage legislation was passed. There was a buy-in from even some of the most unlikely legislators. I was initially surprised that because so many legislators initially, Delegate Braveboy was there through the whole thing, and saw and witnessed too, that initially so many legislators, as even the president was saying, we're not going to go, we won't support the same-sex marriage. Why does it have to be marriage? It can be, we can support all the rights of marriage, but we're not going to support the marriage. But the lobbies were like, no, we won't deviate from that. We're going to go for it. They stood strong, and ultimately that's what passed. So what I've seen, on the other hand, is so often, and I'll just be very honest, this is, and Delegate Bravely, she may agree, she may, have a different view, I'm not sure, but what has been somewhat disappointing to me with some other groups is that oftentimes they will compromise on things that are very important, and it's more important, it seems, to build a relationship with the Speaker, the Senate President, the Governor, and to stay in their good graces than it is to fight and stand strong on the issue. And I've seen that with many issues. I've seen it with some of the housing issues, some of the foreclosure issues, some of the lead poisoning issues, the criminal justice issues, definitely. And so I just think that it's very important. If you agree that something is non-negotiable, then you have to stand strong on it and not be compromising.
And I'd say that one of the strongest, I would say, citizen-led efforts, and I was so happy that folks in this room participated in it, was, really stopping the new youth jail that the governor insisted must happen in Baltimore City. And what I saw was that it was not only having dynamic, fabulous legislators like Jill Carter championing the cause, but really it was young people who were most affected by this, proposal, who said, absolutely not on our watch. We understand that if that prison is built, it will be filled. We understand that. There will be a way. And this prison was for the most violent youth offenders, right? Which there weren't a whole lot of them, but yet they wanted to build a facility to house more than twice the number of young people that at that time would have been impacted. And as we all knew, crime was actually on the decline, especially violent crime amongst young people. And so what I saw there was, a citizen-led effort led by smart, brilliant young people like Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Algebra Project, and others, who really forced not just the folks in Annapolis, but also local elected officials to come to Annapolis to advocate against the funding of this prison. In fact, I remember attending a Senate hearing, and it was amazing that so many young people were at that Senate hearing to testify against the jail. It was something I had not seen before. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of that advocacy as we move forward. But you all did something, and the whole conversation had to change because, you said no, and we represent you. You understood what your interests were. You came down, you were united, you forced your elected officials to be united. And to me, that was like one of the most brilliant efforts I saw as a representative legislature. That's what we ought to be doing, listening to your interests and representing it.
Well, one thing I know for sure is that we don't have enough time. So that I can tell you right now, that because we're out of time of this part of it, because we want to make sure that we make space in terms of the advocacy agenda of a number of organizations that are here. But I want to allow both of the delegates to close out. So I'm going to read the questions that were in terms of, and ask you if you can take 2 minutes just to take one of them and respond to. One is particularly to Delegate Carter in terms of, you spoke about a people's lobby, and the person's interested to hear more about what this would look like based upon your vision. The other questions were, the two of you always activists? And what made you choose your current job, and how do you stay through all the discouraging things that happen? And another one is, if you understood employers of paid lobbyists have an obvious social economic advantage, why haven't there been ways created to limit this? And the last, I think, is a more specific question. It was ABC, and I'll come back to that later, what the individual was asking around to assist in ending the issue of medical abuse and foster care corruption. But I want to go back to the two delegates in terms of, if you can take your pick, and you got 2 minutes so we can move on to make sure that we hear everyone this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief. That's a lot. And my answer, the quickest, easiest answer that I can come up with is that the way that I've been able to stay, the thing that was able to keep me there, even though it has been difficult, being sometimes feeling isolated and invisible when the issues that are important to many members of the communities that I represent, and some of the issues of the most vulnerable people in our society are not heard, and they are invisible in Annapolis. And when you champion those causes, you feel invisible as well. The thing that kept me there was Delegate Aisha Braveboy and Delegate Pena Melnick, because they came in after my first 4-year term and sent me a lifeline because they were strong advocates for these kinds of issues as well, and told me that I wasn't actually insane as what the dialogue was, and that these were really important issues, and they helped to champion great causes. They helped to make bad legislation palatable, and they helped to champion good legislation. And together we were able to have some strong accomplishments. Without that, I don't know if it would have been possible, because the same dynamics that exist in society exist in the legislature. And it's a very leadership-driven legislature, and so when you challenge that leadership or you don't go along with it, the response is to attempt to silence you. And when you don't have a lot of money, or you're not necessarily male and white with a lot of money, it's easier to do that. So the only strength that we have is the strength of you, the strength of the people that we represent, and strong advocates. And frankly, without you, we can't exist, and we won't be heard. So it's very critical that we work harder to build a stronger lobby of advocates from the people. Otherwise, oftentimes, and I probably listen to too much talk radio, but all that you ever hear is that nobody in Annapolis is doing anything for the people. And, it's not true. A lot of people in Annapolis aren't putting the people as the #1 priority. That is true. But those of us that feel that our lives are committed to the people, such as myself, simply need more coalition building and more support from the people to have that strength and that ability to fight harder in Annapolis. It is very difficult to compete with those $1 million paid lobbyists in Annapolis. But what I think is possible is as different groups and organizations and individuals can come together on issues, there are people that can spend time in Annapolis. There are retired people that can spend time in Annapolis. People can alternate their time and spend days in Annapolis. It is important. You can't just come for the one-time rally in Lawyers Mall. You actually do have to walk the halls and visit legislators in their offices and spend time at bill hearings. And sometimes those bill hearings are scheduled at 1 o'clock and aren't heard until 7. And so it's something that you have to be prepared for. And as we go through this process, we will work to find ways to accommodate it so that we can be successful. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm leaving the legislature, so so the person who asked the question, how do you stay? No, but obviously I ran for another office. I wasn't successful in winning that office, but it actually was one of the blessings in life to be able to run for Attorney General and to get around the state and to meet so many people and talk about issues that were important to them, and then hear from people all over the state, and understanding that we do have more issues that unite us than divide us. I know personally I've traveled almost every part of this state, and criminal justice issues, education, healthcare. I mean, these are issues that I think we all kind of are talking about. But instead of just leaving and saying, okay, I'm done, see you all later, what I did is I recognized that there were some challenges to the people actually having a voice in Annapolis. So I went to my local bar association, and I said, look, we need to maybe form a coalition with some of the other minority bar associations around the state and have a lobbying effort on behalf of the people in Annapolis on some, in particular, some of the important criminal justice reform issues, because many of our clients are impacted by the laws in the state of Maryland. And so we know better than anyone else what reforms need to occur, need to happen. And maybe we have the language, maybe we have the proposals that we can present in Annapolis. We can serve as experts that maybe a lay person, they know what's right, but they're not an expert in that field, so they can't speak necessarily with authority on an issue. But as attorneys, we're trained and paid to do that, and we can do that on behalf of the people of the state. And so I will be around assisting the Bar Association as we really move forward more to an advocacy role on behalf of you, the people. So I look forward working with Diane Bell McCoy to identify those key issues that the community wants to concentrate on this year. And we'll be working hand in hand with you, and of course with the Legislative Black Caucus and Joe Carter, who chairs our Criminal Justice and Law and Justice Committee for the caucus. We'll be working very closely together to get the job done.
I want to end, as I move on to Davon to come up here, but I want to end with the last question that I think has been answered and has to be answered by this audience, and that was, there are organizations here that emphasize legislative support, direct action protests, business development, political platforms, and holding grassroots assemblies. Will a coalition of these various groups increase the chance of success? And I think what you heard is yes. And so the quest of that coalition and wanting to do that really rests with you. And I would say that I can only speak for ABC, although I think I can speak for the other two co-sponsors, that we're very committed to continue to serve as a bridge to help do that in terms of, we're clear that it has to be your agenda, it's clear that it has to work for you, but we want to be clear that where we can be supportive, we will continue to play that role, because the change, particularly as it relates for us for people of color, is absolutely essential in this country, in this city, in this region, if we're ever going to achieve in terms of to be successful. And so with that, I would ask you to thank our two panelists this evening for their time.